Bueno, buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por venir. A todas las personas que nos siguen en vivo en este momento, muchas gracias por estar presentes en el primer webinar de innovación, del programa de innovación de la Pontificia Universidad Javeriana Cali. Muchísimas gracias por estar presentes. A continuación, voy a presentar el programa brevemente en qué consiste y después pasaremos a nuestra invitada especial el día de hoy, Tamara Carleton, quien nos tiene preparada una charla muy interesante acerca de Foresight Innovation, que es la metodología que ella ha creado. Les voy a contar brevemente en qué consiste nuestro programa. Nuestro programa Innovation Roads consiste en un programa que busca que las compañías nacionales de la región y de la ciudad puedan incorporar la innovación dentro de su ADN. Hemos estructurado este programa como un esfuerzo interdisciplinar de todas las facultades de la universidad y diferentes profesores que trabajamos en pro de la innovación. El programa inició hace más de 10 años. Llevamos ya más de 10 años como aliados de la Universidad de Stanford. Hemos trabajado en más de 20 proyectos y pertenecemos a la red Sugar, que traduce Stanford University Global Alliance for Redesign, y hemos ejecutado más de 20 proyectos con diferentes empresas que van desde diferentes sectores económicos, trabajando con Banco de Occidente en el sector financiero, o trabajando con Colombina en el sector alimentos, o Toto en el sector industrial o en el sector textil. ¿En qué consiste el programa? Bueno, estas son algunas de las universidades que pertenecen a la red. A la red pertenece la Universidad de Stanford, quien preside y coordina la red general, la Universidad de Aalto en Finlandia, la UNAM de México, la Escuela École de Pons, Paris Tech en Francia, la Universidad de Modena y Reggio Emilia en Italia. Somos un conjunto de más de 15 universidades que trabajamos en pro de la innovación y en solucionar problemáticas reales complejas de las empresas. Allí pueden ver nuestro sitio web, sugarnetwork.org. ¿Y en qué consiste el programa? El programa está compuesto por 4 diferentes caminos. Cada camino, si bien busca un objetivo diferente, lo que busca al final es incorporar la innovación dentro del ADN de la compañía. Nuestro primer camino, que es nuestro camino exploratorio, es nuestro camino de formación y capacitación. Este camino de formación y capacitación está diseñado con diferentes talleres y cursos que permiten generar cultura de innovación al interior de las organizaciones. Lo que hacemos allí es diseñar cursos y talleres a la medida, dependiendo de las capacidades y competencias que se quieran desarrollar en las diferentes empresas, para transformar la cultura de la organización hacia una cultura de innovación. Nuestro siguiente camino es el camino sistemático. Este camino es nuestro camino de consultoría y de acompañamiento a las empresas que quieran construir sistemas de gestión de la innovación que les permita que su organización se transforme en una compañía innovadora. Allí hemos ejecutado este camino con diferentes empresas, entre las que se destacan, por ejemplo, Colombina, a quienes ayudamos a estructurar y diseñar todo su modelo de innovación. Nuestro siguiente camino es nuestro camino de inmersión y es nuestro camino de proyectos. Es el camino en el cual trabajamos en proyectos de innovación para solucionar problemáticas reales de las empresas y trabajamos en alianza con la Universidad de Stanford y un conjunto de universidades aliadas de la red Sugar, en el cual trabajamos en proyectos a través de la metodología de innovación por diseño, más conocida como Design Thinking. Y nuestro último camino es nuestro camino de consolidación, que es el camino en el cual ofrecemos 2 servicios puntuales, que son el servicio de laboratorio de negocios y nuestro servicio de inteligencia competitiva o vigilancia tecnológica. Este es nuestro programa de innovación. Estos 4 caminos lo que buscan es incorporar la innovación dentro del ADN de la compañía. Y a continuación voy a dar paso a nuestra invitada especial del día de hoy. Quienes quieran conocer mucha más información nos pueden encontrar en Facebook, en nuestras redes sociales, Facebook y YouTube, como Programa de Innovación Javeriana Cali, y en Twitter como @me310puj. Hi, Tamara, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay, perfect. So, say hello, Tamara. We are online with all the people. So, thank you very much for your help in this webinar.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. So would you like to do any intro remarks or anything? Or I could go ahead and get started.
Okay, yes, we
Fantastic. Well, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm going to switch screens. If you can see this now, let me know if this comes up on your end.
No, not yet.
Not yet. All right, let's go back and try this again. It's always nice to have visuals, although I can certainly draw as well since there's a whiteboard behind me. All right, do you see it?
Yes. Yes.
Now? I'll put it in screen mode. Do you still see it?
No, we can see you.
Oh, so if I drop to here, does that work?
Nope.
Interesting. Let's do this one more time. Screen share. Start screen share. How's that?
Yes,
we can see it now.
yeah.
All right. I'm going to minimize everything. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay. I won't put it in full screen mode because that seems I lost it the last time. All right. Well, let's get started. The topic for today is all around learning to innovate with foresight. But let me tell you a bit about the background that I bring, which is very much a multidisciplinary background. So I started as a what you'd call a military brat. My father was in the United States military, so I moved every year or so, which gave me a broad background in different countries and places around the world. I went and earned a bachelor's degree in communication from George Washington University in Washington, D.C., as well as a master's degree in applied communication in upstate New York. At this time, the dot-com world was heating up. Can you still see the slide here?
No.
Not at all. What do you see? Is it just me speaking?
Yes.
But no slides. Oh, the shame, the shame. All right, I was hoping to show you how these slides can transition. But picking up then year 2000, this is right when the internet was starting to heat up in the dot-com business. So I moved out west to California and became involved with Silicon Valley, was part of the agency that had built Yahoo's brand. And within 2 years was also one of the first layoffs during the dot-com crash. That gave me some perspective. I then went to work with a startup, ironically, doing new product development when most startups were not happening. But it was a great way to see all the different roles that were happening and understand some of the questions around engineering. I became interested in doing more around communication and marketing and started to do independent work with market research. And that led to my own brand called Presence. And from there, ended up in Switzerland doing independent work for about a year, which was marvelous fun and gave me a chance to see more of Europe, but then had an opportunity to come back to California and actually start a new marketing practice at Deloitte, which is the big, consulting firm. And I was part of the consulting practice. Spent several years working hard and playing hard, if you know the life of a consultant, and had a chance mid-career to go back for a Ph.D. degree. And that's what brought me to Stanford University. I did my doctoral work in 2.5 years, which is very rapid. I was also quite focused. As part of the time, I did a fellowship with BASIC, which stands for Bay Area Science and Innovation Consortium, also a fellowship with the Foundation for Enterprise Development. Both groups, I explored questions around innovation work, and then my doctoral work was all around DARPA, which is a US military agency, but also well known for disruptive breakthrough thinking. And I'm very intrigued by visions of technological innovation. And DARPA also does a fair amount of long-range planning. Bring that up to Innovation Leadership Board. This is a firm that I've been running the last few years, and my focus is around leadership development, innovation services, learning tools. And as you can see here in the light gray box, I've worked with a range of different groups, some of which bring me close and back to Stanford, which is always a lovely treat. But then other adventures have been with different clients and companies working around the world. This morning, I was actually just speaking with Airbus, who the airplane manufacturer. They have now opened a innovation space in Silicon Valley. So I was speaking with part of their team and talking with them about some ideas about how to think bigger and what to do next. So that provides a little bit of fast context for who I am. And some of the work that I do is all around foresight. So you may be asking, what is foresight? Crystal balls, the art or science of weather forecasts, if you will, predictions. As you can see in this picture, it can be also quite scary, and there's a certain amount of planning and anticipation involved. You can see here a working definition. And foresight is very much the ability to plan ahead, being sensitive to what's possible for the future, but it's also what I would say is a mix of mindset and methodology. So mindset is how you think about what's possible. It's your belief and attitudes that you recognize that there is a tomorrow and you can influence actions for tomorrow. And the methodology is you have some techniques to make it happen. And you've got some tools in your back pocket. So my hope today is to, one, help introduce a light mindset around strategic foresight, but also to give you two tools to help you start planning ahead, either for some projects you're working on now, but also for your own life, because you are your own product and innovation. So all of these next slides will skip builds, so they're just less interesting to see, but they do convey the main point. So if you look at the bottom on the x-axis, this is time. And
Tamara, can we try again to share your screen?
Sure.
You can use the green button.
Okay, so you see my PowerPoint screen, but not my face, correct?
No, in this moment.
Oh, you only see my face?
Yeah.
Oh, which I know is always lovely and fun to see. Okay. Let's see if we can do this again. All right. That was a lovely effect. All right, let's see. I'm going to pick Start Screen Share again, and I will go back to Do you see it now?
Yeah, right now, yes. Thank you.
No worries. Let me know. This is really a conversation, even though there may be slides involved.
Okay, perfect.
And I will keep it in not screen mode, but just working mode. So yeah, but at least you can see it, right?
Yep. Okay, perfect.
Sounds good. So then, did you see any of these images?
No, previous, yes.
Yes, but not this one. Okay.
Yeah.
And then this was just the quick definition around what foresight is.
Okay.
And the last bullet point segues into talking about ambiguity. And this now speaks to the start of most new projects, startups, ventures you may do in a big company, but it also speaks to what you might be comfortable doing. So the x-axis, like I was mentioning, is around time. The y-axis is ambiguity, from low to high. And at the start of any process is when you have the most number of questions, unknown factors. So for many people, this is a time of terror. And for others, you thrive with ambiguity. But when you talk about foresight, this is really when, if you're not good at it, then try and find other people who help you become more comfortable, because then you can work together as you start to close on the ambiguity. And I mentioned with the work that I do, I work with leaders and managers, and I have to remind them too to recognize that early ambiguity and to be okay with it. So I love some of these pictures, particularly the first one that you see here, the gentleman holding his hands in prayer. Very much helping them to learn by doing and to recognize that even when they are the experts, of course, it's sometimes very challenging to even know what are the right questions to ask, let alone finding the right answers. That said, let me share a bit of the framework that I use with companies, and then I have a counterpart who teaches these same tools to undergraduate and graduate students at Stanford University. So very briefly, 5 phases of action. Perspective, opportunity, and solution really address how you get started with a new idea. And it goes from big picture thinking to a very user-centered exploration phase down to prototyping possible solutions. The last 2 phases on team and vision are about creating the culture or the climate to do that activity regularly so that you have the optimal conditions so people can do this all the time and it becomes a regular part of thinking and doing innovation. Each of these 5 phases is linked to 3 tools, and you can see here quite a large tool set. This provides the core set of tools that we use to help different groups think about foresight. Now, these are original tools, but as you delve into them, you'll recognize, that has roots in industrial R&D or strategic analysis, or blue ocean strategy, looks very familiar. So there's pieces that all of this rests on. So there's theory that influences and informs all of these tools, but yet they are designed to be very lightweight. So you don't have to have the Ph.D. or the years of subject expertise to get started. You can use them right away. So let's start with one tool. And you'll bear with me since these don't build, but we'll walk through it. So this is a tool called context maps. You guys still with me? You still awake on that end?
Yes.
Good. So context map looks like spokes on a wheel or flowers on a petal. So why would you use it? Let's say you're getting started on a project, or you have team members who come from different backgrounds and you need to all get on the same page. So here's what you do. And I realize now we can't draw it, but imagine I am holding a paper, right? And you're making the circle so it looks like a flower, and you draw the 8 petals all around. This particular context map came from work that I did with Air Canada. So, in the US, we often forget about our Canadian neighbors up north, but Air Canada is, I think, 6th or 7th largest airline in the world. Their cargo division ships everything from horses to medical supplies to packages of all types. And I held a day of innovation with their leadership team, and I wanted to know of their core management, what keeps them up at night. So you can see some of the elements here. Bottom left, security. Bottom right, can the airports accommodate these planes and the packages they're bringing? And then right above on the far right, changing role of humans, which I find very interesting because that's all around people. And for Air Canada, they're watching emerging technology and advances in drones. And do we even need personnel on the ground? And how does that look? So very quickly, you get a sense of the big picture. For the Air Canada meeting, they could quickly guide the discussion because they saw, here are the 8 most pressing elements that they need to think about as they look forward. The question for the group in the room, why do you think there's 8 dimensions?
No. No idea. No.
No,
Tamara. No.
All right. So it's one of it's very practical. 8 is not too many, not too few.
Okay.
The limits of human memory, which is usually considered 5 or 7 plus or minus 2. And so if you have 8, that's essentially as much as you could hold in your head before you might become overwhelmed. So this gives you enough of the big picture to understand, but not too few where you converge too quickly around what's there. Now, the other reason is simply it's easier to draw 8. So
Okay.
that allows you to get started. Another example, just to see how you can apply it in different ways. This was actually a student project that they did with a German auto manufacturer. The question was to understand transportation for megacities. And megacities are cities with huge amount of population. Tokyo, Mumbai, Los Angeles. So you can see here, without having to read this UK commissioned report, what makes the perfect city? Some of it should feel, very much common sense. So productive at the top and population growth. The students use this as a quick way to understand a good city, but then they took this a step further. And this is how I would encourage you to think about how you could use a context map as well. So they said, okay, let's use this as a baseline. So we'll always look at every city where these criteria, productive, population growth, happy lives. And then they did a heat map. And by that I mean they color-coded each petal based on that city. And they used expected change to decide what was the right color. So if it was going to be high change, they made it the dark red. Medium change, orange. Low change, green. And for the students, it was a subjective judgment, but they were drawing from industry data that they were looking at, reports, interviews. Much of this quick sample here is American cities, but you can see no city had the same color coding, right? Well, that became interesting as the students looked at other cities. Well, they went back to the German auto manufacturer. Could they categorize cities? What happened if there was too much change? And part of what came out of the discussion was that the company wanted to go to cities where there were potentially more drivers because they want to sell more cars. So would you go to a country like India where it's not about the driving experience, it's about the driver who's the chauffeur and you're in the back seat. So you have different expectations around what is considered luxury or premium because you perceive the vehicle in a different way. So helpful insight to think about this. And then I challenge all of you in the room and my broader audience, how would you do a context map for you? Could you do it for your skills, your personality attributes? Could you do it for your project topic? Here are 2 examples that came from 2 different groups. On the left, this was a discussion with a Japanese consumer electronics company, and they were looking at their R&D strategy for the next 5 years. So you could see some of the keywords that they put down. This was done a few years ago. On the far right, I regularly teach with the California, I guess you'd just consider it a police leadership academy. So these are police captains, chiefs, and they need to understand how to think more innovatively about their work. So this was one of the teams that was looking at the financial situation, and you can see some of the words that they put down. So all different ways to consider using context maps, and one tool to think about for strategic foresight. Let's look at a second tool, and this one is fun because it actually can be used in different ways based on what you're trying to understand. So it's called crowd clovers, and it's simply named because 1, it looks like a 4-leaf clover, and 2, it's drawing from the crowd around you. And ultimately, how do you convert strangers into connections and friends? We do this with an innovation bias. So we're going to look at assessing the people that you know, either personally or as part of a group, that you can tap to help you grow a network. So there's a lot of theory around network analysis, how many people you connect to on Facebook, how a rumor gets passed around, and so forth. But if I was to ask you, how do you know if you've got a good innovation network? And how do you evaluate it? There's not many tools to do that. And so I created crowd clovers as a way to help you plan ahead, and particularly for students on projects or managers who are looking to do this. This gives you a way to do a fast diagnostic. And you can do it at a project level. You can do it at an organizational level. I'm going to start at a personal level because I think this is very easy to understand. And it's also a very quick way to understand or see how the tool works in action. Okay. And is a four-leaf clover good luck in Colombia?
Yes.
So even better. Then knowing your network allows you to develop good fortune, right? Okay, so 4 leaflets on the clover, and you sit at the center on the stem, right? So on the left, this clover is the catalyst. So you're going to put down all the people that you know in your life who catalyze you. They provoke you, they instigate you, they may serve as your muse. They're the ones who help get you thinking out of the box and considering new possibilities. So I'm going to put down my son, because I have young children now. He's now 6, and as he was growing up in the early years, how he used a tablet was very interesting to watch. And you may see this with some of your younger siblings or cousins and kids where if they grow up with a tablet, they automatically assume that interface applies to everything. So when my son was at a store, he saw a TV playing, and it had a program he didn't want to see. He didn't want to watch that show. So he walked up and he tried to swipe it off the TV. Do you think that worked? No. And when he was 3, he didn't have the logic to understand why, so I simply said, TV broken. But a great way as a catalyst to get me to consider, what are the assumptions we have around technology? Why do we think like that? So there are people like that in your life who change how you see what's possible. The leaf on the top, these are your connectors. So these are people who connect you to resources, to funding, to partners who can help you grow your idea. So I'm putting down Paul Marca, who heads the Stanford Center for Professional Development. He often invites me to campus, and I teach in the executive ed programs. He also has me come in as a guest speaker at different times. And he's a great resource because he opens up what I can do. And when he can't take on a particular opportunity, he actually refers new business to me to say, well, we can't do that at Stanford, but talk to Tamara. So then he, brings me new business in interesting ways. Enablers. These are people who help you get shit done, right? You need them. It's important to have the 1% inspiration, but you need the 99% perspiration, of course, to execute, to deliver. So in my life, Marianne is a professional writer, and when I get stuck or I don't have enough time because I have different assignments underway, I'll call on her for quick help. And I say, help me edit this, or look at this, and is it coherent? So she's an important enabler for my work. And the very bottom leaflet, these are promoters. So think about the people in your life who help you broadcast and circulate your idea. So they're going to introduce you or your idea to other networks. Why do you think this matters? Anybody there? Why is that a good thing?
No.
Any comments? Why do you think you want to have your idea promoted in other networks?
Because you need people to fund your idea sometimes.
Exactly. And your idea you won't find other people to support you unless they know who you are and what you're doing. So David is a native South African, and he splits his time now between France and the US. He also has done some Hollywood productions. He operates in circles that I do not. So a few years ago, he invited me down to South Africa to help train the next or the rising generation of leaders. I'm planning to go back to South Africa this summer to do some work with his team. So he really opens up other networks and communities to me that I'm not a part of. And so that also increases the impact I have with my innovation work. Now, as you look at your network, realize there's different filters you can use to analyze the connections. You could do it in terms of frequency, how often you talk with them. You could do it by quality. Is it a warm, a hot, a cold connection? A third filter is whether or not it's a formal or informal tie. And by that I mean formal is sets specific responsibilities and clear roles, often defined by a contract. So it's your boss, your supervisor, your advisor. Informal is family, friends, mentors, where the status is different, but you still have a relationship together. So if I look at Marianne, we always have a contract in place. I pay her for her time. She is one of my vendors. That's a very clear distinction in how we work together. Still friendly, but it's a formal relationship. With Paul, you can see it's more of a dotted line because he and I have become both, there's the formal aspects, particularly when we do work that relates to Stanford. The informal is when we ask each other for advice and share referrals, and that happens more casually. So you can have that mix, and you can have people cross these different leaves. So then my challenge to you as you think about your network, and Juan Pablo, this may be a wonderful exercise to do later with everyone, is to look at your connections. What does your network look like? And assess it. And what you may find is that you could be light in some areas. You may find, as you see here, that your network feels too small. So this is a table that summarizes some common observations people have as they look at their network. So if you think your network's too small, what's one of the actions you can take? Well, consider following it with people you haven't connected to lately and see if they might need anything from you, that you could warm up a connection or recreate and reconnect. And let's say in the second row, if you have empty categories, this often happens with students when they find that at this stage in their life, they tend to be more in enabler roles, and they'd like to be more in the connector role. Or if you're at Stanford, many of the students automatically think they're connectors, and they even have personal boards of advisors. So you may find that you'd like to create your own board and have 5 or 6 people that you regularly turn to for informal advice. Well, how are you going to find these people? You can see here in the network action, ask those who know you to say, well, you know people in your network. Would any of them be good for me to know? Maybe you could introduce me. So those are some of the ways that you could start to, one, assess your network, but also realize how you might grow, enhance, and build your network in different ways. All right. 2 tools, very fast introduction, and I'm always a fan of going hands-on. But let me share a little bit around the philosophy and the mindset that we talked about for Foresight. And there's a principle that we joke about, which is what you foresee is what you get. And it's a play on words. If you've heard the phrase, what you see is what you get, WYSIWYG. So that means you literally take what you see in front of you. There's this similar version that what you foresee, what you expect will happen, what you imagine, like this sketch of the bridge crossing the river, is also what you will get. And this really holds true. If you have a view that the glass is half full, if you have a view that you can create the glass or find the liquid to fill the glass, well, that's going to influence the actions you take, and that shapes the perceptions you have. And it's a very powerful reminder about the attitude we bring and how we look at changing the world, because you want to create the world that you want to live in. We covered 2 tools here, Context Map and Crowd Clovers, but there's a lot of other tools that you may find helpful thinking about foresight. And these are intended to complement other tools that are out there, such as backcasting and such. So I want to mention this free how-to guide, which is a reference. It was generously funded by the Finnish government, and it's called Playbook for Strategic Foresight and Innovation. There is a lot of content there. It's 250 some pages, but it is a very helpful guide to have step-by-step instructions for all the tools and some worksheets. And you can see the link here at innovation.io/playbook. You are welcome to download a free copy. And it's now available on Amazon if you would like to have a print version as well, but the digital one is completely free. With that, some of you may find reading a bit daunting, and if you are much more a mobile person, this is a new app that I've been working on, and it takes the foresight content, but it also has additional content around design thinking and leadership strategy and product development, and it has a library of micro lessons that's then linked with personal coaching. So it's extension, but it's a different format and way to learn. This is not free, but it is affordable if that interests you. So that gives you, I think, a very broad and rapid introduction to what is foresight and how you might innovate with foresight. So let me bring the screen back here and see if there might be any questions from the audience here or elements that you might like to hear a little bit more about.
¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta? ¿Atrás? No? No, there's no questions. Tamara, there's no questions. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time and your presentation. Thank you.
Wonderful. I hope some of this is helpful, and it definitely encourages you to consider more around what is strategic foresight and how you might take this viewpoint and mindset into the work that you do around design and innovation.
Yes. Thank you very much. See you in June.
Yes. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bueno, a todas las personas que nos siguen online, muchísimas gracias. Este webinar estará disponible también en nuestro canal de YouTube. Recuerden, programa de innovación, Javeriana Cali en YouTube y en Facebook, o @m310poj en Twitter. A todos, muchas gracias por haber estado siguiéndonos en vivo. Hasta una próxima sesión de nuestros webinars de innovación.